Affinity just became completely free, and it's a direct threat to Photoshop. No trials, no gimmicks, and as long as you want it, no integration of AI. Is this an actual competitor to Adobe, or is it just hype? Almost everyone who's made a video on this program has done just that, made a video. So I wanted to actually test this program and see if actual graphic designers could use this as a replacement for their workflow in Photoshop. I design for hundreds of brands each year, some big, some small. So I wanted to see if this program could actually design, mock up, and present a graphic for, let's say, a clothing brand client, which is my direct niche in my design field. So let's go ahead and see. The first thing I wanted to test out was their way of selecting. Obviously, they have a direct selection competitor, but I use the pen tool for professional work because it allows you to get cleaner selections because it gives you complete control. And this was no exception. It was amazing, very smooth to use, and almost identical to the experience in Photoshop. And I also got to mention the hotkeys completely replicate those in Adobe, which allow your muscle memory to flow pretty easily during this process. So for this, I give this a 9 out of 10, actually 10 out of 10. There was no if, buts, or maybes while doing this. One thing I do have to mention is they have selection just ready. So you could already have it as a shape and just convert it to a selection without having to use it in path mode. While in Photoshop, in order to use a selection while using the pen, you have to ensure that you're in path mode or close the shape and then select the path or the shape that you've made, which is very confusing. So they made it a lot easier in this program. Now, one key element that most graphic designers will experience, or one of the coolest things they'll experience, is using what we call a threshold. And I'm so happy that this program has a threshold, because there's a lot of programs that I use that don't have this threshold effect, and it kind of limits what you can create in a sort of program. Let's say, for instance, Procreate. They don't have a direct threshold that I know of. If I'm wrong, please yell at me in the comments and I'll check it out. And if you're curious as to this text box that I have on the left, it's just ChatGPT, because again, I've never used Affinity. So I'm just asking general questions like, does this have this or does this have that? So I don't have my head spinning or looking through forums while I'm trying to design in this. I'm trying to make it as seamless as possible. In Photoshop, there's no one way of doing something. So adding noise, like I'm asking this AI chatbot what to do right now, is almost like 4 different ways you can do it in Photoshop. You can add your own custom texture which has noise. You can go into blending options and add noise that way, or you can add noise as a separate layer or adjustment layer. So I'm asking ChatGPT here, does this program actually have noise? And I'm like, okay, I can't see it, so let's just see. And I ended up finding it within this pixel tab and just adding noise that way, which is really, really cool. Obviously I could have put in a texture, which I'm used to, but having it this way is very cool. But I don't like that it doesn't have it uniform automatically selected. It has it as a Gaussian or Gaussian, whatever you want to call it, as a blur. Also, after playing around, I also found out you could add noise in the filters panel next to the adjustments. For this design, it requires you to make a color layer. So that's just a selection of your object, so you can color it underneath the threshold. And I wanted to use their direct selection competitor, and it's pretty good. I really like how it also selects different segments of the actual image, similar to what you would see in what you call Lightroom for color grading and masking. My first challenge was selecting color range. So I really wanted to select the black and separate it, because obviously this is a threshold effect and we want to separate the blacks for the actual graphic. But there is a way. It's if you go into those pixel tabs, there's different selections of color. It's exactly like that. But for some reason, I was having an issue where it was only selecting the actual image and not the image with the effect and everything else. And I wanted to select the image and the effect with everything else. And it was driving me crazy, because once you had filled in your actual image and you turned off everything else, you can see that it selected the shadows of what we call the image and not the shadows with the noise added and the threshold on top of that. And that was so confusing to me. The first thing that I did was I flattened the image with the actual noise on there, and then that helped a little bit. But I just went ahead and did a few more tests on different colors and different selection methods to see if I could actually get this done, and it turned out working out pretty fine. But all in all, make sure that you're integrating your add noise effect onto your actual image And I think the problem is because they've integrated every single app within one main app, and you go from vectors, pixels, to whatever their InDesign or layout, whatever it's called. It's like the InDesign competitor is. There's integrated effects that you have to sort of flatten in order to use or for your program to recognize. Their version of blending option is called FX, so effects, and it has everything except for stain and pattern overlay from what I could just guess from looking at their overlays, but I'm pretty sure there's ways around that within the program. But other than that, it has everything that you need to make custom text. Issue number 2 was making artboards, and this is 100% just because I don't know how. Like, how do you make a separate artboard outside of just duplicating your actual artboard? Can someone tell me how to do that? Thank you very much. Leave it in the comments. And I completely understand that all these errors that I'm having are just user error, not being used to the program. But I think if you learn this program before Photoshop, or if you learn this program before any other program, let's say that's a competitor to Photoshop, you will have no problem with any of this because this would be the only thing that you learned. But it's almost like I'm learning backwards because it's a complete new program. So I wanted to add some text, press T on my keyboard, added the text. The brand name is just called Revision. And yeah, this one was interesting. Adding text in here wasn't that difficult, but just trying to outline my text was kind of strange. So I had to go within the vector format and then do it that way and create what they call is curves. So once you create curves, it separates the text into individual or editable letters or shapes, what you would call them, and it allows you to make adjustments that way. So when I'm designing anyway, I usually do my type of effects or type within Illustrator and then copy it within Photoshop as a smart object or with the individual layers and then adjust it that way. So it's the complete same way as doing it that way. So that was a pretty cool experience, and that's the positive of putting all these apps into one integrated software. The ability to use pixels and also vectors in one program is pretty cool. And I'm trying to figure out mathematically how this actually even makes sense outside of smart objects. So in Photoshop, for instance, if you add text in as a smart object, you can go ahead and double click that smart object and it opens Illustrator so you can edit that text again. But in here, you can edit it natively as a vector if I'm correct. But I'm in the pixel format now, playing with the text and editing it that way. And I'm assuming that this text is still seen as a vector format, which is kind of crazy to me. And the way I see that is because if you look closely on the actual layers and if you look next to the layers, it will either have this sort of pixels that look like it's meant to be transparent, and I'm assuming that represents that this image or whatever it is a rasterized pixel format image, and anything outside of that, if it's a shape or if it's a T for text, it's going to be a vector format. And that's a cool way of distinguishing the two different, I guess, elements within this program. But it is quite confusing if you don't know what you're looking at, and I had to look at that and be like, okay, that kind of makes sense before I could fully commit to it. And I also love that the text stays as a group. So if I go into the FX or whatever they call blending options, so it's the FX, I can go ahead and play with this and see what effects we could do. And I wanted to just do a simple graffiti style double layer or double outline. And the way I did it is I started with a color overlay, and I went ahead and added a stroke, and then I had another stroke on the outside, which was a black, so white and stroke on the inside, black stroke on the outside, which brought this design together. And I love that it worked perfectly. Another tool that most designers will use within Photoshop in their lifetime is going to be brushes, whether that's drawing something or using brushes to add an effect to a design, which is what I use them mainly for. Although this AI chatbot confirmed that you can add your own custom brushes, and they can be Photoshop brushes outside of Photoshop brushes with custom effects on there. So let's say pattern brushes or brushes that use smudging or something like that. Wilson from the future here. So if you drop down this little menu and go to import brushes, and then you find your brushes, let's say it's the clothing brand toolkit.abr, which is the Photoshop for the clothing brand toolkit, and you drop that in, it will actually allow you to download the brushes successfully into the program. So once you've downloaded the brushes successfully, it adds them in as its own separate section, which I love. And then from there, you can go ahead and see your mockups and also your textures, which you then can use within the program seamlessly. But something I do love about this program is it has a plethora of brushes already built in. Outside of all the brushes that I've downloaded over the years and years I've had Photoshop, the only brushes that I can remember came with the program was just the general brushes when I first started designing. So having the ability of having wet media brushes, dry media brushes, general brushes with all different shapes, sizes, textures, and effects is really, really cool. But I can see that they're still slacking when it comes to brushes with special effects. Again, this section is no different than Photoshop. Add a mask and then go in with your brush and use that to create a different effect with the actual text, and it works perfectly the same as Photoshop. So if you have layer effects on within your blending options and you affect what that layer looks like, the layer effect takes shape by taking shape around whatever you've done to the text. So that's what I'm doing here, just adding a bit of distressing to this text using the dry media brushes on a larger size. I like how the design is coming along, but I need a background to match this sort of look that I'm going for. So I went ahead and added this, I guess, old sand house to this program, and I went ahead and turned off everything else, and I wanted to use curves to separate the highlights and shadows a bit more and to make my actual effect a little bit more convincing. I went ahead and added noise. Again, I'm using the same exact steps. The only thing different is the curve here, so my design can look a little bit better. So the curves work exactly the same as you'd imagine, nothing special there. I really like the way their curves panel looks with the different information regarding the colors for the reds, blues, greens, and everything like that when you're adjusting it. And I really like that, so that's pretty sick. Again, I think I'm not doing this whole selection thing right. So if somebody could help me in the comments, that'd be very much appreciated. So once I've added the threshold, the curves, and the noise, whenever I go to the pixel select and then select whatever color, so that's the shadows, it's only selecting what that layer is. So am I doing something wrong there? Should I flatten everything and then select it that way so it also selects all the darkness and shadows within the image that I've created here, or what I'm seeing as a preview? I don't really know, because it is driving me crazy. Because as you can see here, look at the difference. So it's only selected the actual image with the noise rather than the noise and the curve and the threshold. So I'm doing something wrong here that I can't quite put my head to. Another tool that most designers use is the one selection, and I think this is their version of the one selection here. And it was pretty good. Like once you adjust the tolerance correctly, it works pretty well. I mean, I could have just went and selected the red as a separate color and then cut it out that way, but I just want to use every single little tool in here that most people use within Photoshop, and this tool was no exception. It was great. It worked perfectly fine in isolating what I wanted to select once I dialed in the tolerance. Once I had my selection, I added in a new layer and filled it in by pressing G on my keyboard and using a red to fill that in, basically cutting out my text effect. So it's no longer a live effect, it's a rasterized image, which is really key for printing your graphics. That was a pretty seamless experience. So I went ahead and repeated it multiple times for the outline and also for the house and the guy in the foreground. So cutting him outside of the background was the same exact process. Just like our reference design here, I wanted to add some squiggly lines, some hand-drawn font throughout the graphic, which was pretty seamless to do. We just followed the exact same steps that we did for everything else. So using a hand-drawn brush and then going in with the FX and adding in my, effects that way. One thing that I did notice is Command T in Photoshop is to transform. In this program, they don't have Command T's to transform. You have to use that little hand selection or transforming tool and then do it that way, which is fine, but also very annoying. But everything else, like selecting an object and then moving it that way, is fine, but I wish Command T for transform was a thing within this program. One thing to bring designs together is textures. Textures allow your designs to go from something like this into something like this, which is amazing. And there's two ways of doing it manually, which I'll show you guys here, or doing it using a brush pack. And the way you do it my way is basically you have to have a duplicate, add in a mask from that duplicate. Then if you go into the brushes and you have the clothing brand toolkit, there's a bunch of textures already here for you. You can see the effect is loading in. And then from here, you can use a bunch of different brushes. So this one here, this one here, this one here, this one here. All these work natively within this program, which are great. And I also love that it gives you a live view of the actual textures working on that program, which is amazing. So again, I really love the tools that I've created for Photoshop, but it's amazing that they work within programs like Procreate and programs like Affinity, making sure that I've blurred the barriers between designing in any program that you want and building the design that you want for your clothing brand. Doing this manually, all you have to do is import your actual texture. So this one's from Texture Labs. Shout out to Texture Labs, a bunch of free textures, and they're an amazing platform for any free assets regarding Photoshop, Illustrator, etc. So once you have your texture in here, basically you want to just select the actual shadows, and you can do that either by going up here and selecting, or before you even do that, adding a threshold and then flattening that image. Then heading to pixel selection, and then finding your shadows. And then from here, it will select all the shadows within that texture. Go ahead and proceed to turn off the layer with the texture on there, and then go to your mask that you've created and fill that mask in with black, and that will cut the texture outside of your image. And now you have a complete design. So one thing is important is you need to be able to change the color of a mockup. So that's going to be done using gradient maps, and they have gradient maps in here, which are amazing. But one thing I did notice is that gradient maps in this program are extremely harsh. So there's no room for wiggle room. So it's like you see the colors and the pixels starting to degrade a lot faster than what you would see in Photoshop. And I think that's just how the program is set out. I don't even know how you would change that. Maybe I'm working in a lower pixel density instead of like 8-bit, maybe working 16-bit, but I think that would show more than what you can see now. And after playing with it for a bit, I think I got the effects dialed in to a certain extent. So I was able to change the shirt from a black shirt into a white shirt, but it's more so like a darkish white. And that wouldn't be a problem in Photoshop. So I did notice that. Obviously you get the results, but the results are not as great as you'd see in Photoshop. So this is the final design. Do I think this program is better than Photoshop? No. Do I think this can replace Photoshop? Absolutely. Give yourself some time in this program and learning it as a second language, and Photoshop won't even be on your mind anymore. With that being said, I love you guys. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.